Now that you are all experienced downloading relatively difficult Excel data sheets and then manipulating them, you're going to find this assignment much easier in terms of data acquisition. The challenge is going to be in doing the mapping itself. You will go to the Refugee Data Finder page, which I have given to you in the assignment, and then you're going to answer the query questions over here. You're going to click on population figures and go to next. Make sure that totals is selected and go to next. And then you'll have to unclick each of the boxes so that you only have refugees selected. And then after that, you'll have to select the year. And I recommend that you do a year like just 1 year. I'm going to do 2020 here. It will make things a little bit easier. Then you want to go to the country of origin. And I've already selected the Democratic Republic of Congo, but you'll see there's a drop-down menu that allows you to select what you want. So I'm just going with a 1. And then I want to, after I've done that, select all countries. And these are all the countries that people from the Democratic Republic of Congo are going to and seeking asylum in. And then you've selected all of this properly, and you can query the data, which means you're going to be downloading those data. Well, you'll be downloading the data as the query data, as opposed to all of the data that is out there for all refugees for a particular year. So I hit that query data, and it should download it into a zipped file, which you are now very familiar with. And I'll bring that zip file over here, and you'll see that there is, again, sort of a set of metadata here. But what you really want to click on is the population data. And so you can click on those population data, and here they are right here. And now it's very easy for you to make modifications to this table. You're just going to select those top rows and delete them. And then you'll have all of these countries here that are the countries to which people are going. And you could delete rows here if you wanted to, but you really don't need to. All you should really do is select the entire spreadsheet and then go over to the filtering tool, as we've done before, and filter it. And the filters are now applied. And what you should select are the largest to smallest of the number of refugees. And so now I have the top 10 countries from Uganda down to France, and it tells me the number of refugees for each of these. So these are the numbers that you are going to be using to make the line map that you are going to be composing next. And again, relatively straightforward to do it. You'll probably just want to have, you could print this off, you'll just want to have these 10 numbers and the names of the countries reasonably close to you when you go ahead and make the map. So that's all you need to do for the data part. Now we are going to start composing the map, and ultimately you're going to produce a map that looks something like this. And don't pay attention to these little lines here. When in the final composition, it actually looks just fine. Every now and then, at least on my computer, I find that Map Publisher and Illustrator working together sort of get a little overwhelmed with the graphics, and sometimes you get some little funny lines and things showing up. But this is what you'll be producing, something like that. It's going to take a number of steps for you to get to this point. So I'm going to actually close this right now, and I'm going to get going and show you how you make the map. Now, I'm not going to show you every step, but I will share this with you. And I'm also willing to share the AI file with you as well, if you would like to take a look at the layers and all those sorts of things. But let's turn it off first. And one thing I want you to notice right away is that I have Map Publisher running. So if I click under Help here, you'll see that Map Publisher is licensed and running here. And that's, of course, an important thing to do. And now I'm going to create a new file. And the new file that I'm going to create, I'm just going to use the common size to create that. And it will produce a new artboard for us. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and import a shapefile. And I have given you a shapefile that you will be able to import. Remember, though, that it comes as a folder of information with more than just one file. There are a couple of other little pieces of the file in there that you'll need to that you'll need to bring in. So to import, you just click on this import button over here, and then it brings up a window, and the format you should choose will be Esri shapefile, and then you can browse for it. And I have browsed already to the name of this shapefile, which is called World Countries Generalized. And then I'm going to say open and OK, and it will bring it into my artboard right here. And so now I can see the artboard, and you might notice that, I've got these windows over here, so I might have to move them to see the entire thing. But they'll show up not only under your layers right here, which is where we want them, and I can lock it so you can see it outlined sort of in black here. But most importantly, it's going to appear down here in the map views. Those map views are where we see the geospatial data that we are bringing in. A really important thing that we can do here that I just want to show everyone is we can click up here in the properties bar or map attributes within the properties bar of Map Publisher, and click on that, and you'll see that the attributes come up with the country's name as well as that code that you used back in the second assignment. So I'm going to close that because I don't really need it on right now. Now I have this, and I will go ahead and save it. Before I save it, though, I wanted actually to show you that all these data are stored in what's called a map view, which is sort of like a package. And if I double click on that package and bring it up, you'll see that it tells us a little bit about the data and what actually is here. And that might prove important in later assignments. For this assignment, it's not particularly important that we do that, though. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to make some compositional changes to the map. I could change the artboard. I probably won't do that right now, but I could if I wanted to. The most important thing I want you to do, though, right now is I just want you to click on the shapefile so that all of these are selected. And there is a way to assign symbols to a shapefile using something called map themes, but we don't need to do that for this assignment. We can just go to the properties, and here we can change the fill to something that we might want what is going to be the land masses to look like. And I'm going to pick sort of a brownish color here, which I think will look good. And then I'm actually not only going to change the fill, but the stroke is going to be the line that surrounds the polygon. I'm going to change that to sort of a dark brown color. And then I'm going to reduce the font so it's relatively small. It's just going to be 0.5 points. I might also want to change the opacity a little bit as well. And so let me bring that opacity down, and I'll just see what it looks like at 75%. You can see it's a little bit grayer now, and lighter color. And so now I can go back and lock that layer here. And I've got something that looks a little bit more like a handsome world map. Another really important thing to do to give the map figure ground contrast, which we've talked about, is to make sure that you can really tell the difference between oceans and between land. And so now what I'm going to do with this original layer that was created here is I'm going to just move this to the side a little bit so I can work. And then I'm going to fill that layer with a rectangle, which will be behind the map. And so let me go ahead and do that. I think I'm all the way, and you'll see it just selected that color right there. I'm going to use the hand to draw this back. But now I'm going to change the properties of that layer by going here, and I'm going to change the fill to sort of a light blue color. And I'm going to sort of select this bluish color right here, and the opacity is way too much, obviously. So I'm going to reduce that opacity here to 25% and see what it looks like. Now I have oceans, I have land, things are looking the way they should on a map. The next thing that we're going to do, just to get ready to start actually doing the mapping, is we're going to select the country that we are going to have migrants from. And so I can do that using the direct selection tool here. Oops, I meant to click on this direct selection tool here. Oh, it's locked. I forgot that I locked that layer, so it won't let me select it. And now I can click on the DRC just by itself, and I can change the properties of just that one place. And I'm going to change the properties and make it a little bit darker so it stands out from the other areas here. And then I can go back and I can lock that layer again. and won't mess that up again, hopefully. So both layers are locked. And now I have a map of the world. It's not finished, but it shows the country that is going to have immigrants coming from it, refugees coming from it rather, and then all the other countries of the world that are potentially destinations out there. And I can save this whole file, and then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start to add the lines to it, but I'm going to wait and do that in a separate portion of the video. All right, now that we have the map all set up, it is time to start drawing the arrows that are going to show the direction of flow of refugees from your origin country to destination countries. And you're going to have to do this on a new set of layers. At least I would recommend you do it on a new set of layers. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm just going to call it refugees. And now I can make sure that's highlighted, and as I produce arrows, that's where they are going to go. To create the arrows, there are a couple ways you can do it. There are different tools. The pen tool is probably the most obvious, but I like using the curvature tool because with the curvature tool, you can make cool little curved lines, which won't be that important for most of these, but is sort of worth at least showing to you. So I'm going to first create a line from the Democratic Republic of Congo to Uganda, which is the country that has the greatest population in it. And don't worry if the line isn't perfect, because you can, of course, go back and fix it later on. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to unlock that path. And I'm actually then going to name the path, and I'm going to call it Uganda, so I know which one I'm working with if I decide that I need to edit. I'm also going to zoom down in here a little bit so that we can work with that path a little bit better. It's unlocked now, so I should be able to click on it, and I should be able to move the anchor to it so I can start to create that line like this. You can see already that the line is showing that it has a fill to it, so I'm going to have to change that in the properties, and I'm going to have to go from a fill to no fill. So that takes care of that, and then I have to give it a color. And I'll stick with this brown color that I'm using right now. Oops, excuse me, I changed the fill to a brown color. I want to change the stroke to a brown color, so I'm going to do that right now. Now, the way that you are going to modify each of these arrows is going to be based on its proportion of the number of refugees. So you're going to do a proportional scaling of the arrows. In my case, this is a bit of a problem because there are a huge number of refugees that go to Uganda, 417,000 in 2020, compared to the next lowest one, which is 75,000. So there's sort of a huge scale difference. But it's not that big of a deal. It just might end up, making you create an arrow that just doesn't look as good as maybe some of the other ones do. But what I found the best scaling to do for this was to create a scaling in point size that was significantly, smaller, obviously, than either 417,000. You could never do that, or even 417. So I scaled it at, I believe, somewhere around 20, I think I did 20 points. So essentially, I am dividing this number in half, and then also by 1,000 or something like that. So when I do that scale, you see you end up with a really big stroke. And that actually works compared to the much smaller ones that we're going to end up having. Now remember, you can change what the stroke looks like, and we're going to have to do that by moving around the handles in the curves that we have here. So that's one of the cool things that you get to do with the curvature tool, is use these what are called Bezier curves to create interesting lines. I would like on this to actually have an arrowhead. And so to do that, you have to open up the stroke window. And the stroke window, again, if you just go up to window and click down to stroke, you will find that. You can add arrowheads down here, and I'm going to click an arrowhead, and you'll see as soon as I put that arrowhead on here, it's going to end up being pretty wonky. I think it's not selected, so let me select it. There we go. And now I'll add the arrowhead to it. And I end up with this massive arrowhead. And so you want to scale that arrowhead down. And I've been finding an arrowhead that's scaled to around 30% works pretty good. Although in this case, the 30% one might actually be a little too big. So let me take that down to 25%. Now we can start to see the tail of this appear. And I might want to actually stretch that tail out here a little bit and make just that single anchor just a little bit bigger so I can actually see an arrow appear. So again, this is not a perfect one to do, but I'm going to change from the direct select to the main select, and I'm going to just shift this, and I'm actually going to shift it by, I guess that's sort of shifting the size of it. I'm going to just shift it by moving it like this so that I can create an arrow that goes from the DRC to Uganda like that. And I'm going to call that good for right now. You'll see that in the final map I produced, I did a lot more of adjustment with this. I'm just going to produce one more arrow because I think you get the idea here. And so I'm going to click on the refugee again. I've locked that. And I'm going to create a new arrow. And for this arrow, I am actually going to do the very smallest one. And so let me get out of this. And I'm going to produce an arrow that goes to France. And I'm going to make an arrow that doesn't really make a lot of sense here, just because I want to show you something else. But I'm going to click here, and I'm going to make a nice curve that goes up to France. And obviously, the size of it's wrong, so I'm going to make it a lot smaller. And instead of it being 20 point, this thing needs to be, I believe, something in the order of 0.5 points. So it's a really thin line that I've created here because the number of refugees is that much smaller. And then I'm going to give it an arrowhead, as I did before, and I'm going to change the scale of that arrowhead again to 30%. And I think that works. Let me lock that layer and take a look at it. And it's really a tiny arrowhead. So I might actually make that arrowhead just a little bit bigger. Let me select that path and make the arrowhead go up from 30% maybe to 40% so we can see it a little bit better. So the reason why I put it over the top of the other arrow like this is because I wanted to show you what you can do when you do that. What happens, of course, is that it gets blocked by the other arrow, even though it's on top of that arrow in terms of the layers. And you might end up having arrows that need to be on top of each other like this. And so what you can do is you can select that path, and then you can go to Object, Path, and then you can outline the stroke. And that should allow you, once you've outlined the stroke and changed the outline of it, to actually be able to see it above the other one. But I'm going to have to actually change the settings of the outline to do this. And you'll see that I can select the settings right here. So what you will see has happened is that one line, which is called group here, and we can change the France so that we can identify what it is, has created this sort of path and group that look a little bit different from other paths you've seen. You can select the path, and you can do this for arrowhead as well, but I don't think we need to do it for arrowhead. And then you can go to the properties, and you'll see that it's turned the line into an object, which is filled with the brown, which is what we want. Then we want to do is sort of outline it with a stroke. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to select the same color as the map background is. And then I'm going to reduce the point size from 1 point, which is really good, to 0.1 point. And then I think if I lock this and look at it, you'll see that the arrow sort of has an outline on it now. So that's a little trick that you can use if you do have sort of the arrow thing taking place. Okay, so let's move on to this. Let's imagine all of our arrows have been made now, and we've attached strokes to them. Everything's looking good on the map. So now what I'm going to do? Well, the next thing that we are going to do is we might decide that we don't want to have the whole world on here. And so what we can do here is we can actually create another layer that will allow us to show just what it is we want to show. And so this is called layer 4, but I'm going to actually call it Clipper. And you'll see what I'm going to do here in just a second. In that clipper right there, I'm going to place a rectangular box. And I'm just going to cover the area that I actually want to highlight and show on my map, which is going to be mostly sub-Saharan Africa. And I'm going to change the properties of it so that there's no fill whatsoever. And then I'm going to change the stroke so I can actually see it a little bit. I'll make it red. We're going to hide it later, so it's no problem, and a little bit bigger. And so now I can go and I can unclick that. And yeah, that's the area that we want, so that's good. So now I'm going to highlight that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this function up here, which is called crop. And I'm going to click on that crop. And I am going to do, I believe it's map vector crop. Let me make sure I got that right. No, it's not map vector crop. That's sort of new. It was wrong. I'm going to click that. It's going to be map crop to shape. So I've got the clipper selected. I do the map crop to shape. And what I'm going to do is I am going to click on all layers in the document, and it's going to crop it to that rectangle. So let's see if that works. I say, okay. It's going to ask me, do I want to treat the locked layers if they're unlocked? Yes. And then I'm going to do that, and it says there are some errors, but I'm going to just close that and see what happens. And it actually worked. Now the artboard is big, but I just have that part of the map that I want to look at. And I can make that clipper go away, or I can change it into a line that I want to have around the map if I want to have a whole neat line or something like that. And now I can make other edits to the map.
So what are some of the other edits to the map that you will have to make? Well, you're going to have to add some sort of a legend here. And the legend, you would create a whole other set of layers. And you'll see on the final map I made, I put a legend down here in the corner, and it included a couple of sample arrows and their sizes, as well as a little bit of text that described it. I included a source, and I also included my name in the corner. And then I put a title on the map as well. Now, one thing that's noteworthy about the title is that if you put it on top of the other layers of the map, it might be sort of hard to see it. So you will probably want to try to put it in some of this empty space, like the blue space of the ocean or something like that. Let me show you what I did with mine, though. I'm going to bring up my final map here.
Okay, here's my final map. You can see the legend on it, and here's the legend in a series of boxes over here that has the text and the paths. You can also see what I called marginalia, which includes the source and the cartographer's name, and then the title. And I wanted to keep Europe on my map. And so what I did was I actually used a little bit of sort of what's called a drop shadow underneath refugee flow from DRC 2020 in order to allow me to keep the Europe map there and still have that title pop out a little bit. And I don't know if I'd like to hear your opinion if you think that this does a good job of it. The easiest way to place the title, of course, is to place it in some empty space, as I've done with the legend and the source information down here. But there are, I'm sure, other good ways to do this. You can also do different types of not only drop shadows, but things where you knock out the material underneath the map as well. But I just wanted to experiment with a little bit of a text thing here. So I'd be interested to see how you experiment with this. But I think the final project and product, rather, looks relatively good here. I think that you can see the arrows well. You can really see that differentiation between Uganda and other places. Of course, the map might include the names of countries on here as well. I've chosen not to do it. But there are lots of other modifications we could make to the map probably. And maybe we can discuss this map a little bit in class after you've looked at the video, and we can talk about what might be changed in it and maybe make some of those changes. So that's all I have for producing the line map. And as always, I am happy to make new videos for you and show you things that might be a little bit confusing in the ones that I have made.